So thank you for inviting me to present the galactic bulge and what we know about it. And the talk will be dedicated to show how we can. I will show what we know about the galactic bulge, how we can model the stellar population in the bulge, and also what we can learn from the microlensing on the galactic structure, especially in the bulge. So the outline will be first to introduce what we can know about galactic structure from microlensing and what we know can help to predict microlensing. And then I will explain the bulge region complexity, why it's so complex, and how we can deduce some things about it. Then I will explain how to integrate all this knowledge in two galaxy models that will allow further to make predictions. And at the end, I will explain how we can get better constraints on galactic structure using the microlensing themselves, and I will show some examples of that before the conclusion. So first, the microlensing was dedicated to determine, to look for dark matter in the galactic halo. So it was really to learn more about the galaxy. And this was done especially in the halo toward the Magellanic Cloud. But afterwards, there have been experiments dedicated to the galactic bulge, where we want to constrain the mass distribution with regard to the light distribution, and to find any differences that can explain the dark matter, for example. So from the microlensing, there will be inference on the stellar population, on the bar shape, for example, angle, on the mass distribution, on the initial mass function of the stars themselves, about the star formation history, and the link to the planetary formation. So the microlensing also, if you add planets on this microlensing from stars, then you can also get more accurate distances, as Jean-Philippe showed on Tuesday. So why do we do galaxy modeling? This is a way to put together many different kinds of constraints that we are acquiring by different way of observing. For example, observing stars, star distributions, so the light distribution at different wavelengths. So star counts, which is different from the integrated light. That star counts with type, gravities, metallicity will learn you how the bulge was built. The dynamical mass estimate from kinematics and from star counts, and the microlensing. In order to put all this knowledge together, the only way to do is to put all this into a unique scheme that allow to make predictions and compare with the different type of observation that you have. So now going specifically to the bulge region, this is a really complex region of the Milky Way due to several things. First, our position in the galactic disk far away from the bulge. There is a lot of extension between us and the bulge. And in the bulge, you have a superposition of the different populations of the Milky Way. All the disk, the thick disk, the halo, and an internal population of the bulge are sitting in the same place near the center of the Milky Way. And it's very complex. And first, about the extension. So this is the main problem to understand the Milky Way. And it needs to be taken into account to interpret the data that we are seeing. And in order to really understand the extension, we need to have distances, because the extension, if it's close to Earth or in the bulge itself, this is not the same correction that you have to apply on the observations. So there have been several attempts to determine the 3D extension models. And I give you here some examples. And for example, the first one by Duhamel and Spergel in 2001, where they tried to have a model multi-component model that could explain the dust emission and the stars and the extinctions in the stars. And they end up with a smooth model of the extinction with the bar. So they assume the bars, spiral arms, local arm as well, and the disk and so on, and trying to constrain the parameters of this model to have a smooth overall large-scale structure of the extinction. But the extinction is not smooth. So on top of this large-scale structure, we need to have information more in details. We need to know where are the clouds and so on. So this is a map obtained by Marshall et al. Based on the Besançon-Galaxy model, and try to explain the two-mass data accounting for the extinctions. So they fitted the extinction, and the projected density shows that you recover the clouds that you knew before, but you know at which distance they should be in order to explain the star counts, the two-mass star counts. So this is a correction to a stellar model, including the galactic structure parameters, and it's widely used in the literature. And also, it seems to reproduce the arm tangent. So this is what we expect. There is also a very nice map of extinction, which has been for the local solar neighborhood. Here you see a map, a projected map of this map from Lallemand et al., where you see the different clouds in a radius in a diameter of 2 kiloparsec around the Sun. So this is a 3D map, and it has been extended by Capitano et al. This year, and it's going now to a radius of plus or minus 2 kiloparsec from the Sun. So you have a local map, you have more extended maps, you have also a large-scale structure, and there is also this recent map done by Green et al. From PASSTAR photometry using a Markov chain Bayesian fitting method. And these are some cut at different distances of this map. You can see at different distances. At larger distances, I have not much information on the distance, but it's a good map for the side of the Pan stars. Of course, this part is missing in this case. And it's interesting to know how these maps intercompare with each other. So we have several good maps. We think they are good they have good points in each of these maps, but they do not always agree. Where we can compare them, we try to do that. And for example, in Green et al. Paper, they compare their map with the Schlegel map, with the Planck extinction map, and they found systematic, especially in the galactic plane, but also you see some structures. So there are differences because we don't always know exactly the status of the dust to be sure that the models are correct. Now, if you compare the same Green et al. Map with the Marshall et al. Map, you have a different distance range, the Marshall map, and the Green et al. Map. You see that roughly they have the same structures, but the structures are not always at the same distance. For example, at this distance, there is less dust density than the green. Green has more there. It means that this dust has been moved at different distances between the two maps. They do not completely agree. So we have some maps. We can infer from these different maps and put that in the galaxy model, knowing that they do not always agree, but this is what we have at the moment. So now I'm going to the stellar population that we have in the galactic bulge. So I will try to explain what we call the bulge. So in the literature, you will see people calling the bulge the classical bulge. This means a population that has a spheroidal structure which is completely old and was built at the beginning of the Milky Way. with radial orbits. However, in other papers, the bulge will not be a population, specific population, but just the region, central region on the right side sense. And this is generally what I will call the bulge region in order to be simple, because other people are really calling bar or bulge the scenario formation of this region. And in fact, when you look at the stellar population, you can infer that if this is a bar, it means that it was formed from instability in the disk. And orbits are specific to this dynamical instability. If you have a classical bulge, then you have different kind of orbits, different shape, but also this region can be formed from merger in the early times. So what do we have really in the galactic bulge region has to be determined. And in order to do that, we need to observe the shapes, the star counts, what are the shapes of the structure, what is due to the different populations, and what are the metallicities of these populations, and what are the orbits of these stars. So because we can have several scenarios, several populations, we have to take all this into account. So now you will see in the literature that the bar is boxy, or the bulge is boxy, it has an X shape, and so on. What is it exactly? We first see an apparent X shape that was obtained by Ness and Lang in 2016, where they studied the WISE catalog of stars and tried to, so this is face-on, so this is longitude-latitude plot of the stars, and they subtracted an ellipsoid, an exponential to that, and get an X shape. So here you are looking at the bulge, and what you see the X shape because you have something which is boxy, and on which you subtract something which is ellipsoidal, and it creates an X shape. But most generally, this is not what the people call the X shape of the bulge. The X shape is what you see when you look at population and you see double clump in the star counts. And in this case, the X shape is perpendicular to the line of sight of us to the galactic bulge. If I explain you what exactly is the double clump. When you see a color magnitude diagram towards the bulge, this is from Hugel in this case. When you count the stars along this red giant branch, you see two clumps. Normally, if the population is unique and all at the same distance, you should have one clump. But in some fields, you see two clumps. So it was pointed out by McWilliam and Zoccali in 2010, observed at latitude less than -6 degrees, but not clear at -4 and not seen at all closer to the galactic plane. This was also, so you can point in different directions. The numbers here are longitude and latitude. You can see at -8, you see the double clump at different longitude. And when you report the mean position of this red clump as a function of x and y, so this is the galaxy seen from the top, you have the galactic center and the observer down there, you see that the two clumps correspond to two distances. So you have two peaks of density along the line of sight. This is what we call the two clumps. So there has been an extensive study of Saito et al. 2011 from the red clump from TUMAS, where they confirmed the two clumps along the line of sight. This is a projection here as a longitude versus x, so along the line of sight at different latitudes. There is another projection here where you look at x, so direction to the galactic center, and at different longitude. And again, for example, you see here that you have one branch of the X shape and the other branch of the X shape. So the X shape is perpendicular to you. And so if you, for example, now look at the plane X, so the X, this is along the line of sight to the bulge. Z, this is the vertical position. If you look at the measurement of the clumps at different longitude and latitude, here you can fit an X shape on that. But we do not see the X shape at latitude less than -4 degrees. So maybe it's not present, so it's smooth. Or maybe you do not have accurate distances to see these two shapes because the extension is higher and other reason. So now we know that we have an X shape in the distribution of the bulge. And other information has been pointed out. It's that if you look at the F dwarfs, the young stars, so less than 5 GeV, you have no X shape. And if you look at the old, very old, for example, Auroral Lyrae, they are generally larger age than 10 GeV, you don't see neither the X shape. So it gives you information on the age of the bar buckling, because an explanation of the X-shaped structure, there have been several scenarios to explain that. So the information that we have is that the X-shape is apparent at higher latitudes. This is the bar which creates the X-shape at age between 5 and 10 GeV. The SIG disk has no really X-shape, but a very small, slight X-shape could be an influence, dynamical influence of the bar potential. And the thin disk has no X shape as well. So the scenario proposed to explain this is that you have a pre-existing thin disk, and when the bar instability buckle the disk, then you have the orbits of the bar which create this X shape. Yeah, I should go a bit faster, so I will show you the orbits that we explained in the bar orbits. So you have this kind of banana orbits, for example, and you can see that you can create X shapes by adding different banana orbits or Bretzel orbits and so on. So you can create this X shape just by the bar. So what it means is that you can explain the bar shape, or the bulge region shape by having a bar which has buckled the thin disk, which is an X shape. So you have a scenario to explain that, but assuming that the bulge is not a classical bulge. The bulge region is populated by the bar which has buckled the thin disk. So now about the measurement of the shape of this bar, you can see different values in the literature, especially for the bar angle. For example, they have been claimed to be an angle of 27 degrees with the sun galactocentric distance, while there are other values obtained from star counts, which are closer to 15 degrees or even 20 degrees. And there are also the shape is determined also by ellipsoid with scale length along the X, Y, and Z axis. And you can see there are various parameters of that, determined by different people using different data. So there is not a unique model describing the bar in a region of the galaxy. And about the dynamical mass, you can see also different values. There is more or less a factor of 2 difference in the total mass of the bar. For example, in this dynamical model from Portel, they claim to have a bar with a total mass of 1.2 to 1.6 to the 10 solar mass. And while in the Besançon model of 2012, we have a much smaller bar. But here, this is the bar only and not all the population in the galactic bar. a bar region, and here this is the total. And in the revised model from Simion, we have a much larger density. From red clump stars, Valenti et al. Determine also a value which is close to the Portel et al. Value. But it's not a real model. This is extrapolation of the red clump with some assumption about the initial mass function, for example. So we know some things, but we have uncertainties, especially on the bar shape and the bar mass. But we have also other kind of informations coming from spectroscopy. For example, from Argos survey, they observed a different population and obtained radial velocity and metallicity in different regions. And they point out that they could fit the star counts and the metallicity distribution, assuming that you have several populations added on the line of sight. So here, this is at several latitudes, and you see that the proportion of these different components change as a function of latitudes. But the decomposition of this depends on the author from authors to authors and from survey to surveys. For example, work by Aurora Sarriagada on the Gaia ESO survey at different latitudes and different longitudes, and they decompose the metallicity distribution in only 2 components. It was sufficient to explain what they observed. So they have one major component which corresponds to the bar, and the second component, a metallicity smaller, which corresponds to the SIG disk. And from Gaia ESO survey, if you summarize what they observe in different latitudes, so in red at -4 latitude, in orange -6, and in blue -10, you see that the metallicity distribution changes from a peak at -0 when you are lower in latitudes and to a peak at -1, between -0.5 and -1 when you are at larger distance. What it means is that if you have 2 populations, the bar population dominates when you are close to the plane, but further from the plane, you are dominated by the SIG disk population. So you can explain the metallicity distribution with this simple scheme where you are dominated by 2 main populations. And the proportion of the population changes with latitudes, and this mimics a metallicity gradient. When you look also on the radial velocity, what you can see is that if you look at the different fields from the Gaia ESO survey, and you look at the velocity dispersion as a function of the metallicity, you will also see that the metal-rich population has a vertical velocity dispersion gradient. Here, the color corresponds to different latitudes. So at different latitudes, you will have a different velocity dispersion. And while the metal poor population, this is the SIG disk, has always the same metallicity, velocity dispersion. So it gives you a clue for the dynamics of the regions. Now, we try to make all this information to put that in the Besançon galaxy model. So I will go fast about that. So this is a population synthesis model. So what we do is we start with the mass of gas, and we transform the mass in stars using assumption on the initial mass function and the star formation history. And you make the stars evolve on evolutionary tracks. So we have stellar models, and we deduce the distribution of the stars as a function of effective temperature and gravity, for example, as a function of age. So you see here the shape of the color magnitude diagram, and the colors correspond at different densities, and you see how it changes with the age of the population. So using this tool, we combine this with density laws, which are constrained by the dynamics. We add to this the extinction, a 3D extinction model, and we simulate the different line of sight. We add observational error and selection functions in order to be directly comparable with observations. So in the bulge region, what we input in the Besançon galaxy model, we input the thin disk, the same as locally, but with a different, because of the density gradient and metallicity gradient, it will be a bit different in the bulge region. We have a bar with an edge, we don't know yet, between 5 and 10 gigayear or 8 to 10 gigayear. It has to be, it's not completely constrained. We can assume a bar pattern speed or use n-body dynamics in order to simulate the bar dynamics. We have a thick disk, slightly metal poor, and the kinematics is a differential rotation but a bit slower. We have a halo. And we also have the possibility to add a classical bulge on this population, but not necessarily. And so what is the predicted metallicity distribution in the bulge? We did a simulation of the apogee survey, DR12, in different regions of the bulge, and we compared the metallicity distribution at different latitudes. And you can see that we have a good agreement between the apogee metallicity distribution and the model. There are also the model predicting things in the galactic bulge. For example, here, this is a comparison of the CMD, of the CMD of two mass in the direction in the galactic bulge compared with the Besançon model and the trilegal model. So the Besançon model is not perfect, especially at low magnitudes, but trilegal underestimate more the density of stars in this low faint magnitude, sorry. So now if you compare the metallicity distribution of the two models with data from Huttenhaler, for example, you see the observed distribution, and you see the distribution predicted by the Besançon model and the one by trilegal, and there is strong differences in this region. This is because of the thick disk population, which are differently predicted by the two models. So another important ingredient is the kinematics and the dynamics into the model, and it will have also impact on the microlensing predictions. So from the kinematics, we did a recent analysis of rave and TGAS data in order to constrain the three parameters in the model, which are the solar motion, the thin disk velocity dispersion as a function of age. So I have to go fast, but just to show you that when you compare this model, this fitted model on local data, you have a very good reproduction of velocity dispersion, radial velocity dispersion, radial velocity distribution, sorry, for hot and cool stars, and also of the proper motion in rotation and declination from Gaia. So we have a model which represents nicely the kinematics, and also this is a comparison of the kinematics of the model with the radial velocity distribution from the BRAVA survey directly in the galactic bulge. So now going to microlensing predictions. So Iman Kerin started to use the Besançon galaxy model to estimate the optical depth for microlensing with the galaxy model in 2009. But since then, the Besançon galaxy model has changed a lot, especially for the bulge region. So Avifan et al. Extended this simulation and revised completely the predictions. And there have also been predictions by Ban et al. For the free-floating planets. And there is a simulator online that you can use to make the maps from the Besançon model. So I will show you some examples of the maps that are predicted from for MOA. There have been some already presented by Mark in the previous talk. So I will go first. So this is a prediction from the model for the resolved source and all sources for the microlensing event rate and per star and then per square degree. And now if you look at the residuals from MOA2 to Besançon galaxy model, you see that there is a very good agreement, but in this region, where some people call the hotspot. And this difference could be due to several things. Of course, we want to learn something from this discrepancy. And it could be a part of extinction model, maybe, but also it could be due to an extra population. So I will discuss that a bit further. Now, if you look at the average time scale, this is the prediction of the model. And when you compare with the MOA data, you see that these are the residual difference between MOA data and BGM as a function of time, day, and you see there are systematics that could be partly explained by the kinematics of the bar itself. So we are going to look into this in more details. And here you have the decomposition of the length in different populations. So it's mainly dominated by the bar, so it has to be with the dynamics of the bar, probably. But the difference is not very significant. It's at a 2 sigma level. So there is nothing to change a lot. So it could be to do, for example, to the bar pattern speed. So this is something that we should look in more detail. However, there have been some revision of the MOA optical depths corrected for incompleteness, and this is a slide given to me by Matthew. And this is the MOA event rate with the WF fields. And so the revised counts from MOA are here, from different, and you see the Besançon model in the here is well below, but it was the Besançon model of 2011 before we revised the bulge population. This is the same for the event rate. And now, if we compare the new corrected MOA counts and with the new BGM 2013, then the difference is very low. So it's at 1 sigma or it's a bit more than that. And here, this is for the event rate per star. So there is not a huge discrepancy between the model and the new data. But it could be something, however, especially if you look at this latitude. And we have some idea in order to interpret that. In 2012, we pointed that we do not produce the central region of the galaxy, and there is a need to add a population of nuclear bar, which we have not done yet. But there has been an attempt to add this extra component in the Simeon et al. Paper. And if you add this, you have no residual for the star count themselves. And so they fitted a new model with an extra component in these regions. So now we have to recompute the microlensing prediction, adding this component to see if the fit is better. So a summary of the microlensing comparison. We have an overall agreement between prediction and data at 1 or 2 sigma. We can solve this by a nuclear bar or maybe changing the extinction model. We have, there are uncertainty on the optical depth due to incompleteness as well, and uncertainties in the model due to the Boltzmann dynamics. And also different models could explain the observed optical depth and event rate. So this is not, there is no a unique model that can fit that, of course. So I will skip this because I have no more time to show you what we can learn from microlensing. We can do bulge archaeology using microlensing from WFRs. Because we will have, for example, in case of planets, we will have distances, and so we can have better information about the shape of the bar angle. And the data that we can have from microlensing will be very complementary to Gaia data. There have been some attempts to determine dark matter distribution from the microlensing themselves, for example, in this paper. And they fit a different rotation curve that fitted the more optical depth here. And they explain that they don't need to have a lot of dark matter in the inner galaxy. So we have a near maximum disk. So I have no time to show more, but you can look at this paper. And these papers are also constrain the initial mass function from the microlensing. So assuming different binary fraction, they have constrained on the shape of the IMF. What they conclude is that the IMF in the bulge is very similar to the local disk. So it confirms the universality of the IMF. Yes, and also the constraint of the IMF can be done especially using the time distribution of the events. And you see, for example, here different IMF that they fitted, and to conclude that that the IMF is the same in the bulge than in the bulge than in the local disk. So here are my conclusion. Galaxy model can be used to estimate the microlensing rate for WFIRST or future space mission. And the result of this mission will constrain also our knowledge on galactic structure, on kinematics, and planet populations. There is this tool that you can use to create maps, but this tool does not take into account the very recent result of the Galaxy model. So it will be updated, but it is not done yet. So thank you.
Okay, questions for Annie?
So the online tool you have for the Vedanta model is still with the very out-of-date model. Do you have plans for updating that?
So the Besançon model online is now we have a new site,
Okay.
which is called Model 2016, with the version of 2016, which has a better model for the bulge in particular.
Any other questions? Yep.
Frank, you could explain a little bit where the lower limit, the lower limit for the age of the bar comes from. So your estimates were 5 to 10 gigayears or maybe a bit older.
Yeah, this was a constraint from Lopez Corredoara study where he studied F-dwarf star counts in the bulge region and showed that he cannot see the double clump in the F-dwarfs. And he concluded that F-dwarfs are normally younger than 5 gigayears. If you do not see that, it means that these stars have not been buckling by the bar. So the buckling occurs before they born. And so he explained that the bar need to be older than 5 gigayears.